And the other thing actually we were talking about. So yes, so it's a big interlude, but let's go back to I want you to explain. You explain it from your point of view, and I'll tell you all wrong. This was, when was it? 2018. I think we found ourselves emotionally hijacked in an aeroplane in Tokyo with about 18 prosecutors from the law surrounding our aeroplane, making us thumbprint and reading us all sorts of stuff we didn't understand. So talk us through that.
Understand any of it. Oh man, yeah, what a day that was. Definitely just one of those days in your, when you look back on your history of, well, that was an important day, like that happened. So we flew from Beirut to Haneda, our sort of home away from home there. And landed. I can't remember the exact, circadian flow there, but I just remember that when we landed, I was exhausted, and we thought that we were done for the day. I was planning on going back home for Thanksgiving, which is a big holiday for us Yanks, and we got a call that said something to the effect of, "Don't move the airplane. We'll give you instructions soon." And this was not like from air traffic control. This was from the company. And I immediately thought, oh, he's got to go back to Paris, and we're gonna have to draw straws on who's gonna fly. And I was like, well, Ben's definitely flying because he didn't care about Thanksgiving. And so I was gonna be hooking myself, trying to figure out who was gonna miss Thanksgiving. And we were just sitting there twiddling our thumbs, just nothing happening. I was exhausted. So I just went to the back and, hopped on a couch and went to sleep. And then the next thing I know, I've got, a phone in my face, and it was, David, something very bad has happened. And I was just like trying to, wipe the sleep out of my eyes and read this thing. Carlos Ghosn has been arrested at Haneda Airport, charges pending, blah, 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 whatever. What in the world, and then it was just this big, it felt like we're in a movie or something, it was just like, I don't know, who do we call? Who do we trust? What do we do? All of this just all at once. And I mean, so, next thing I remember, they needed us to move because we were on a busy international ramp, and they needed us to move over to long-term parking. So we moved the plane over there under power, and then it was then the part, like, I don't know, it seems iconic to me because I've seen it so many times of our airplane being at that location, and then the shades come down, Tomomi or one of us put the shades down, and that was like the only video they had. And then, then we had about, like you said, maybe 14 or 15 guys that were very young, all in the same suit. It was like the Men in Black, came onto the plane, and they were searching it for something. I'm sure they bugged the plane. And yeah, so then they asked for our phones and our passports and our luggage, and obviously we complied with all of that. And then I snuck away to the front and felt the need, for whatever reason, to call back to Tennessee and let our bosses know, try to figure out what we're going to do. Of course, it was, 2 a.m. in the morning or something, so no one answered. I just left messages with everybody. So I kind of glazed over that. We have a satellite phone on the plane that we could use, and it looked like I was just on the headset, so I didn't have like a physical phone, so the guys didn't know what I was doing. Then man, it just seemed like we were there for hours and to do nothing. And there was one small Japanese lady that said she was from Nissan, and I've never seen this person. I have no idea. I don't know what to do or think or believe. And there's all these papers all in Japanese, and you have no idea who's representing you. And so it's at some point I asked, I guess I won't mention his name, but asked the highest person that I had ever met and in Nissan headquarters, and asked if we could speak to him and ask for direction from him, because this person I didn't know. And we finally got that word from that person. That person said comply. And so that's kind of what we did. We just kind of kept going along the motions. And I immediately, my brain, like I said, this earlier in our sort of prologue there in our introductions, that this job was just such a big part of my identity, and just everything about my life was all based on this. I felt like I had the best job in my hometown, in the exact place I wanted to live. And I just immediately, well, right or wrong, I mean, I guess it turned out to be right, but just, this is it. Like, this job is going to be gone. This is going to just shift my entire life plan, and I always knew that academically, that something like that could happen. I mean, I've given the speech to people. So, I mean, I've been laid off a bunch of times before, but just did not see it. Like, this one was just out of the blue, right? Like, it just, everything seemed like it was going great. And yeah, so I was kind of a mess after that. I mean, I remember, I don't think I would have recognized it at the time, but definitely the feeling of adrenaline and, just foggy thoughts and all over the place. And I had a little side business going, a side hustle going in aviation. And I that night I closed it. I called my one employee and said, "Hey, I don't have bandwidth for this anymore. My heart's out of it. We're going to shut it down." And just, it just felt like just this. I canceled our Thanksgiving plans. I stayed home. When I finally got home, it was crazy. Like, the whole airline flight home, from Haneda to, I don't know where I connected, let's say O'Hare, and then back to Tennessee. Every billboard, every like TV screen, newspaper, everything was that thing that just happened. It was like, how did this happen? Like, this was such an incredibly big thing, and we were right there in the middle of it. But what does this do? Like, what's going to happen? And it was just very, very disorienting and scary. Very stressful for me. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Again, it's not a reflection of different personalities. I was 10 years older than you, and I'd lost my job a few times under some quite extreme circumstances. So, in a way, I had that form. So when these guys came on board, for me, it was more of a, wow, this is pretty curious. This has got to be a story worth telling at some point. I'd had a team mutiny on me when I was in Kazakhstan, took over the leadership. They didn't think I was leading the team properly. There's a big story behind that. So that was quite a wake-up call for me. And I was also going through an incredibly difficult divorce with a lawyer who was the country's senior lawyer. She's a baroness, and I decided to represent myself in court. So I had been in some pretty extreme and was in some quite extreme circumstances. So this was just another part of the storytelling for me. But I completely understand how you felt, because I actually was in that situation at the same time as you, young children, bought a new house, doing it up, trying to do a little side hustle with the property stuff. And I was unemployed for 8 months because of a job that fell through in the Middle East. So I remember exactly how you felt in that time, thinking, oh my God, I've got all these responsibilities. And what we talked about, actually, it was you who brought it up, was when we actually had to fly the aeroplane from Haneda to Narita after that. And Hook was in charge. He was the senior captain. And actually was great, because all the time he was processing our duty hours, and when we couldn't, almost to the minute that we needed to taxi out. And we made that decision to move the aeroplane so that we could go home the next day. And when we got to the hotel and had a bloody expensive whiskey, And you just said, anybody remember what happened in that flight coming down there? And we're like, shit, yeah, it was one of those things. We were all in an emotional. We're tired, as you say. We'd flown through the night. Circadian rhythms were all out of sync, thinking we were about to lose our jobs, and it was bumpy. Yeah, because you mentioned, didn't you, when Carlos Ghosn got off the aeroplane? Just what was that? He mentioned something that just, as you say, became an apocryphal.
Yeah. And just for reference for most people, that we as the pilots in the front of a business jet, the relationship you have with the principal client in the back could be they know you really well. They invite your kids to come, all the way to Mr. Ghosn was kind of on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. All business, 100% all the time. And so he would just always get off the plane and say, have a good rest, see you next time, or, something just little bits like that. Not really personal. He would know some of our names and things like that. But he got off, and this particular time he just said, wow, that was such a bumpy flight, which when he said it to me, I took note of it, because it was kind of like, I don't think he was complaining. It was he just said it was so bumpy, a lot of turbulence. And I thought, that's really strange, because I've flown him through so much worse, weather throughout the time I've been flying with him, and that he recognized that one as being bumpy. And afterwards, I kind of brought that up and thought, well, that was sort of a good summary of that day for him. Quite a bumpy ride, And,
yeah.
But yeah, I was
banged in jail.
Going back to that day, I was glad that I recognized in myself that I was not in any way fit to fly that last leg. And honestly, I was amazed. I didn't even understand how you guys were, but I trusted you, of course. And I said, hey, I'll sit in the jump seat and I'll back you up, but just know I am out. Like, my brain is going like this every different direction. And we were able to get it done. But yeah, I guess now in retrospect, thinking about it from your perspective is like, okay, I still got to finish this day and get the job done. Like, this is not the biggest day of your life, like I felt like it was for me. And I think there's some lesson in that too, that, I think we tend naturally to overfear sometimes, right? It turned out to not be anywhere nearly as bad as I feared. Everything that happened afterwards.
The anticipation was much worse than the actual outcome.
Sure. So,
yeah,
strange times.
It was strange times, and again, different levels of experience, different characters, all playing together. He's a few years older than me, so probably 15 years from him to you. We had our lovely flight attendant on board as well. So it was. I think we in that circumstance, because we're all mates, and we worked really well with that. I think we did. I didn't think that you were in that level of emotional upset, because you seem very calm and collected about the whole time. And I love the fact that you're so honest about it. A lot of blokes typically is like, yeah, man, I can do it. I'm the gung ho. I'm John Wayne. I'm going to pull out my pistols, and prove myself to be the hero pilot. But you actually have the emotional intelligence to say, actually, I'm feeling as though I'm not in the right situation, which is why I think you're an incredible communicator. I think it's a great quality. I talk about having a very good understanding of both our feminine and masculine sides, very much the sort of pushy, enthusiastic, willful male sides, along with the compassionate, empathetic, polite, nurturing feminine side, which we both have inside us. And I think there's a few people that have that, and I think you've worked on that. And I think probably a lot of that perhaps is to do with the fact that you lost your dad at such a young age, someone you clearly respected, and you had to think deep about that. And I think that's a big thing. But here we are now. We've still got a bit more experience. We're telling the stories. Hopefully that will provide some comfort for other people, and think, well, we're not the hero pilots. We're not the heroes in any way at all. We're human beings. We're a bit of soil borrowed from the ground, and we're wanting to find the best way to function, to make the most of the incredible opportunities. That's the way I think about it, and soak up the experiences and bring as many people into that realm as possible. And I think that was a good example for us and Carlos Ghosn got arrested, because we all knew that it was going to come to an end, and it did. I think you lasted a bit longer than I did. I was the first to go with Faraj because we were effectively the contractors. Got the call. That was November when he got arrested. July time, I got the call, and the chief pilot phoned me up, and I just said, "I know why you're phoning." And he just said, "Yeah, sorry, mate." But funny enough, it was the day after I'd just come out of my divorce trial. I'd been in trial for 2 days, walked away with no money whatsoever. And again, it was just like, come on then, bring it on, baby. Let's have the next thing. I thought, okay, so I'm now losing my job. I haven't kind of got any money coming out of divorce at 48, and it's been a hell of a... But again, it's just how do you... It goes back to that whole Frankel thing and the Stephen Covey thing. How do we process? Give ourselves that space, not be hijacked by the emotions and think, yeah, okay, it does feel overwhelming and bloody scary, but let's put some executive function in here by using that neocortex, by using the sophisticated brain. But also, this is what I wanted to touch on now, was the idea that there's always so many people to support us. You and I very much agree on the idea of going for therapy, counselling, whatever it is, because it's just incredibly valuable. And a lot of people find that a very scary thing. Perhaps they don't want to be told things that they've been trying to run away from themselves. I think it's so important, as when we're feeling unsure, feeling a little bit isolated, is not to isolate, is to reach out to somebody, a friend, go for a walk with the dog, speak to somebody professional, find the right professional. Don't always find the right person. You've been involved in that process. So have I. I'm a coach now because I think it's so beneficial to support people, because I've been supported all my life. So.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I have kind of two areas where I get, maybe professional help, if you will. One, my wife and I see a marriage counselor. We've been doing that for over 10 years now, and seeing the same person, which has been really incredible. And then I also have I guess I don't pay for it, but a professional mentor who's just really incredible. Like, he does this for his day job, but he kind of works with me just because, I don't know, he's a really nice guy and we like each other. We enjoy the time together. And yeah, through one of the coolest things that I've learned about myself through both of them in different ways is that I'm really good at reading other people's emotions and understanding when they're upset, when they're happy, and being able to work with them and add to our pool of shared meaning, right? But one thing that I've missed somehow along the way, and I'm getting much better at it now through working on it, is that I don't realize when I'm angry all the time. Like you gave me, props for recognizing that I was upset that day and recognizing that I couldn't fly an airplane, but that's pretty rare. A lot of times I'm not so good at that. And one of my earliest recollections or realizations of that was through my counseling process, where my wife, Catherine, had the opportunity to bring up a situation that had happened, in our lives. And it was, we were out on a date night, and we were at a park, and it was a really nice day, and we were playing a board game with my brother and my sister-in-law. And I was really concerned about something. I don't even remember, something about the babysitter, and we needed to get home. And I said very calmly, "Hey, it's time to go. We got to go. We got a babysitter, and we need to go now. Like, we can't finish this game." And my wife was really upset, and we got to talk about it during the therapy session. And Catherine painted this totally different picture of what happened. And I was just laughing. I was like, no, I did not yell. I did not raise my voice. I did not make a scene. That was my brother. I'm totally comfortable with him. Why would I make a scene in front of my brother and his wife? And she said, they both looked at me and said, "You should call your brother and ask him." And I did. And he said, "David, I was uncomfortable. You were such a jerk." I was like, "What? I don't remember that at all." Like, in my retelling of the story, I was calm and collect, and it was just I mean, I was very embarrassed, and but it was, the first time where professionals told me, that gave me that feedback of, look, this is something you're not good at. Like, you just didn't get this tool at some point growing up, but we can work on it. Like, we're going to work on it. And, I'm still not great at it 10 years later, but I do check in. I have an app on my phone where I check in with how I'm feeling every day. So at least now I know how to categorize it into 4 quadrants, high energy, low energy, and pleasant or unpleasant, right? So I can at least put myself in 4. I can tell you, okay, right, I'm very high energy. I'm very pleasant right now. I feel great. I'm here with my mate, and we're chatting. I'm smiling, having a good time, and I feel like I have a lot of energy. And it's not bad to be in any of those quadrants. It's just, it's the stimulus, that are going on in your life, right? But recognizing where you're at is going to change how you act and how you respond. And so, yeah, that's been super helpful for me. And I have kind of a standard thing I tell everybody anytime anyone's curious about marriage therapy. I give them this one sort of anecdote. I say, how when you're arguing with your spouse or someone that you're really close to, a family member or whatever, you argue and argue. Like, when you're in that conflict, you argue and you're wanting to win, right? And you just keep pushing and you keep pushing. Normally, you guys both end up mad or whatever, but occasionally you win. Like, occasionally you get the other person to say, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I was wrong. I'm, whatever." And if I've just been beating them over and over again, in my mind, in my competitive spirit, I'm like, I won, but I'll always just feel like crap after that, when it's your spouse. Because it's like, yeah, I won the argument, but this person is a puddle of emotion at this point, and I've just really beat them down, and I don't feel good at all. But when I leave a therapy session after 45 or 50 minutes, I always get that feeling of I won. Not always, but 9 out of 10 times I walk out and I feel that feeling of I won that like, the other person understands what I was angry about or what I was concerned about. My wife really gets me today. But she feels good and I feel good. And I don't know what it is my therapist does, like what Jedi mind trick she's working to make me feel like that. But man, is it worth it. It feels so good to say, look, we're closer. We feel more connected right now. And I feel like I won, it's just such a good feeling. And it, it has me going back for more. I don't know that we'll ever stop. We go through like peaks and troughs with our scheduling of therapy. Like we've been going through a really tough period over the last, basically since the new year, where my father-in-law, who I'm very close with, has dementia. He's had it for, probably about a decade or so. And it's been a really slow but steady decline of sort of stair steps in his eventual death now, of him losing capacity to do things. And so we actually live now very close to them geographically, just a couple doors down. And this period where, since about the new year, where he's gotten so dependent that we knew that death was coming. It's on the doorstep. So my wife and I both were just like, hey, let's just schedule therapy every week. Once a week, indefinitely. Some weeks we won't be able to do it because I'll be traveling or this or that. But let's just go ahead and proactively do this because we know we're in the storm. If we have nothing to talk about, we'll go through one of our old minefields, or we'll find something. There's always it's Sunday night and we got therapy on Monday. We'll come up with something. We'll make some argument happen. But it's been really nice having that where I think we feel closer than we did in January. Just because, we've just really, we've bonded, we've like teamed up, and we're going through this together. And we know so much about each other. I know how she's going to react under stress, and I know how I'm going to react under stress. I'm going to go to work. That's what I did the night that Mr. Ghosn was arrested. I mean, I contacted the staffing agency, the headhunters that placed me in the job. I contacted them that night. I redid my resume. I was on the phone. Like I told you, I called and closed my business that night. I went to work. Like that's my natural reaction. And so, over the last few weeks with my the crisis here in my in-laws family side here, it was, look, I'm gonna do everything for the kids. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna do that because I know that I'm gonna have a ton of energy, to work, because that's how I respond to these kinds of stress. And my wife, she wants to be held. She wants to be snuggled. She wants to me to be there, be present, and connect. And so, yes, we had to balance that, of course, but we've gotten really fluent with each other, which has been great, and something that, in all situations, when good times and bad, it's just helpful. So, yeah, so that was my plug for marriage therapy. How about that?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's just the whole kind of seat of that is not being afraid or having the courage to face our fear of being called out, because it's very easy to deny and try and hide away. And then the shame of that always leads to some level of anger, victimhood, and the need to point the finger in the opposite direction. And it can be very much the vengeful thing. Well, you've done me wrong, so I'm going to have to do you twice as wrong, or your family twice as wrong. And we know that in the worst of circumstances. But I think that for me, certainly likewise, an impulsive enthusiast, I suppose, is that when I get frustrated, things don't go my way, I have blown my top. People say, oh, he's such a calm influence. I am. But then when I go. And that upsets a lot of people because they're like, geez, man, didn't see that coming from anywhere. You're not the kind of person I thought you were. And again, I'm trying to create a harmonious, friendly personality, which I think is the case. But recognizing that I'm going to be hit by these very strong emotions, as you say, in your quadrant, which I love. High energy, low energy, feeling critical or whatever, is I now see my ego, which I put down as my co-pilot on the right-hand side shoulder, is feeling unsure, inexperienced, scared by everything that's happening, the metaphorical weather, the metaphorical mountains, the metaphorical individuals who don't understand what he's talking about. And me being the captain, my executive brain on the left side says, okay, mate, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. So completely valid. Thanks a lot for pointing out the mountains, the potential for you to be laughed at. It's valid, but actually, I think we're going to get through this. It's not going to kill us. It's not going to bring our shit down and crash everywhere. So, but that's the hardest thing, is to be objective about ourselves. But I think the seat is to recognize if somebody is calling us out for some reason, to try and understand, is it because of somebody else's emotional response? Because we are perhaps a threat, or we've just triggered something inside of them and they're going off on their emotional hijack? Or are they genuinely saying something that would be worth us or me to think about? And I go away. And actually my kids, because I'm not married, I don't have a partner now, so I'm out of that situation. So my kids are the replacement for the marital situation, which is often the case anyway. So, but when I was feeling a bit overloaded a couple of weeks ago, final stage of an interview coming up, and I was starting the podcast. Yeah, the job hadn't quite worked out. It was 2 months in between, lots of financial pressure, of just thinking, oh God, I've got so many balls that I'm juggling here. Where do I go? And I basically was just feeling, trying to do my meditation, my exercise, my cold showers, but I don't think I'd actually taken myself out just to do some yoga or some meditation. I had to say to the children, listen, guys, just to warn you, I'm feeling topped out here, so I'm going to be short, and I will apologize afterwards. But if you could do what you can, as I tried to do with you, if you could try and soothe me, I think. And I heard myself saying that and thought, geez, man, that's only in the last couple of years you've been able to say that to your children. Otherwise, it's like, no, you're wrong and I'm right. I'm your dad, so you bloody well listen to me. And of course, that's the ego taking control. So
yeah, it's amazing what our children can come up with if we, we can't always use them as a partner, right? As someone to add to that pool of shared meaning. But sometimes they're really damn good at it. They see through a lot of stuff, They know so much about us intuitively because, like you said, they've been trying to win our affection, our protection for so long that they know what's going on. They can tell,
Yeah.
I remember one specific time with my younger daughter, Cora, who has at times said she wants to be a therapist, and her middle name is Sage. So it just all works together. But it was a situation. We were in Chicago, and it was around a holiday. I can't remember which one. And Catherine was here in Idaho with her parents, and they were sick, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And I was way above my limit and just was all over the place. And I for whatever reason, I just trusted her. I just looked at her, and she sensed everything going on. And she said, "Dad, I really think what you need is a plan right now. Like, why don't we just sit down and write it out?" And I mean, I don't know, she was 7 at this point, I think. And
brilliant.
And I looked at her, and I had that moment, right, where I almost said, "What do you know?" And I suppressed that, took a deep breath. I'll humor her. I'll humor her. And oh my gosh, I just got an envelope out and a pen and said, "Look, we got to be here on this time, and this is what we need on that time. And then after that, really, this isn't that big of a deal. If I can just get past these first 3 things." And we got people here, we got people there, we get, and oh my gosh, I felt so much better afterwards. It's amazing. Our kids, they can really see us, if we give them a chance to say, what they know to say. They're just parroting what we've told them, what they've learned from us when we're calm, and then in that moment when you're tense, I think they can give you just the advice you would give yourself, right? It's kind of a mirror.
It is, isn't it? And there's lots of science behind us that tells us children's brains are so incredibly malleable. They soak so much up so quickly, and we're born with huge amounts of neurons that can be put towards a particular area. And obviously, if it's not part of your upbringing, of your community, of your experience, that gets gone. So they concentrate on the bits are relevant to your personal circumstances. So when they're young, they have that ability to recognize. And I think very much so, that's that intuitive thing, again, going back to the spiritual idea of just taking ourselves away, getting rid of all the garbage that the spiritualists talk about, all the nonsense, psychological nonsense, psychological garbage, because everything that we've created in terms of identity is either cultural, through our family, our upbringing, our experiences at school with our friends, and biological, of course, we've got the genes, but then the genes can be changed as the generations go on as well. And I think it's recognizing of stepping back, cleaning the layers of the onion. We talk about that in terms of psychology as well, don't we? Of just realizing, actually, get rid of the lightning strikes, the thunderstorms, and seeing that and knowing that there's the clear sky ahead. But I think making that plan is brilliant. And the self-awareness is the seat of emotional intelligence as well. And then from there, we can start to regulate our emotions, use the tool, find some tools, make a commitment to find the tools to get out of that emotional grip so that we can start thinking wide. Physiologically, as soon as we get hit by the cortisol, stress drug, adrenaline, norepinephrine, it's basically getting us at fight and fly, sympathetic nervous system, part of the autonomous, I can't say it anyway, you know what I'm saying?
Autonomous.
It's basically saying, autonomic nervous system. Yeah. So it's the fight and fly, right? You've got to bloody well do something here because you're going to be eaten by this, or you're going to be struck by a train or a car or whatever it is, and all the stuff in the past. So it shuts everything else down. It makes you a bit stupid, but it applies huge amounts of energy to your muscles and your awareness. You've got to make a decision to get out of this quickly. And the quicker we clear out the cortisol and the adrenaline and the norepinephrine, the quicker we can get back for the rest of our body and brain to be adding something of greater nuance, greater sophistication. And again, it's that nuance, that understanding why chemically is happening. If they taught us, our kids at school, this, which is something I'm working on to go into schools and have this talk, understanding physiologically what's happening to them and knowing that actually, okay, take a big deep breath because that will clear the cortisol through, do some exercise, that will clear the cortisol through. And then you can get back to functioning healthily. And of course, the fight and fly system shuts down your immune system, so your immune system. So then we start developing all sorts of rashes and problems and irritable bowel syndrome, et cetera, along with all the gut health. It cripples us. So I think recognizing when we're in this fight and fly situation and thinking, I've got to do something here to get myself into the rest and digest stage, which is the parasympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system. It's the same thing as Frankl talked about, same thing as Stephen Covey talks about. It's the same principle of working out the tools to get to that point of regulating our emotions and waiting for the time, recognizing it's difficult, but waiting for the appropriate time to now start putting the extra wonderful bits in place to come out of the problem and continue in as a successful path as we possibly can.
Have you read The Inner Game of Tennis?
No, I haven't. I have heard of it, but I haven't.
It's my favorite book that I haven't read yet. I feel like it's just referenced so much. I have it on order. I guess when I went to order it recently, they have a new version coming out. And so I was like, okay, I'll go for the new one. It'll just come and I'll be surprised someday when it comes in. But I from my understanding, because I've heard lots of references to it over the years, that's a lot about what they talk about is that, is basically the key to tennis, and then extrapolating to life is to recognize when those levels are going up, to be able to recognize it in that moment, and then have something built in to help you realize you're there. It's almost like when you're in a dream. I don't know if you do this, if you have like a recurring nightmare or something. And I have those. I don't know why, but something that triggers in your mind that, okay, yep, here we are. We're in the dream, or we're in the stress moment or whatever. And I'm going to do this one thing. I'm going to wiggle my toe, or I'm going to do the deep breath, or I'm going to, in my dream, my plan is, it doesn't normally work, but my plan is I'm going to realize that it's a dream. And then I'm going to go do something crazy that I would never do in real life because I could get away with it in the dream, And, but yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that book, but I think that it talks, from what I understand, it talks a lot about that, and that being, sort of this coach's big epiphany was, if he didn't really have to teach people how to play tennis. He just needed to help people understand themselves when they're in a moment that's created by all of this junk, all the garbage that you were just bringing up, and say, look, man, I'm just in a tennis match. I don't have to, I can let all that other things go. This is just tennis, I just need to go back to playing tennis and not be worried about my ego and my this and all those voices in your head and all that. I just got to get back to playing tennis and not running on adrenaline, because that is taking me out of the game,
Yeah. I think that's another great example. It comes back to the whole point of, well, the name of the podcast is Uncovering the Aviation Mindset, which isn't specific to aviation. It's just we create this incredible journey from the takeoff to the landing point with huge amounts of input from literally thousands of people and an incredibly sophisticated machine. How do we translate that mindset of everybody coming together for such efficient, brilliant success to do it in our own lives? And I think we've represented that today, haven't we? Mindset and confidence is all about that, recognizing the stimulus, finding the space, then we respond appropriately, respond in an able way, which is something we can discuss next time. Well, we run well over my normal time, and I know we're going to be splitting this down to 2, baby. But it's been great. We could go on forever, couldn't we, really? We've got some great book titles. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, I've read extensively and studied. Stephen 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, I think, and the tennis book.
inner game of tennis, and I gave some. So I spent a lot of time in Crucial Conversations as well, which is another one. That's one I've read it over and over and over again since my brother recommended it to me a few years ago. So yeah,
brilliant. Well, I'll put that in the show notes.
You can
as
just
well.
cycle that one around over and over because it just happens so much, and yeah, you got to be ready. Yeah,
got to be ready, and it's all good stuff. It's finding those tools to understand and create.
Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks so much for having me. This has been just brilliantly fun. I've listened to so many thousands of hours of podcasts, and I've asked one question once of a podcast. So this is just really just taken me to another level of my life of actually spending an hour with you on a podcast that millions of subscribers are going to listen to. Positive.
Well, thank you. And you've always been such a support, and I appreciate it because it is a nerve-wracking thing for me to come up and start this podcast. It took me quite a few years to get to that confidence. I understand that, but this is why we're here, to try and encourage other people to step outside the comfort zone and find the very best of themselves. And I have to say, it's been incredibly easy talking to you, as it always has been. And that is, again, so important, isn't it? Breaking down those barriers to communication as quickly as possible, so we get some seriously good stuff going. So anyway, you're a diamond geezer, and I haven't seen you for a few years, and a bit like Hook and all the other gang, Ed, I so look forward to catching up with you at some point in the States, or when you're over here, of course. But
yeah, I will, for sure. Hopefully not too long. Thanks, Ben.
No, definitely. Okay, mate. Right, we'll catch you soon. We'll come back for more, as I always say, because all my guests are just such wonderful people, and it's so interesting. We're going to do round 2 at some point. In the meantime, mate, keep it in the greens, yeah?
We'll go.
So there we go. Another of my great mates, David. It was such a good conversation, and I really just thought, right, it's time to wind it up. But I'm going to get him back, of course, for number 2, like the rest of my guests. Again, as I have always say, is love to hear your comments. It's really so important that we get this dialogue going. It's so difficult to get feedback these days, isn't it? We're so busy. We have these great conversations and then we just pass on. But actually, having the discussion is so valuable for all of us. Likewise, if you've got any suggestions for me, you would like to see other subjects talked about or other guests, and even if you feel as though you would like to come on as a guest, I would love to have you. So please just leave me a message. You can contact me at my website, www.benlefleming.com, and I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn under that name, Ben LeFleming. So please do contact me if you're interested in finding out about what I offer in terms of my mindset and confidence coaching. Head towards the website again. In fact, I also have a monthly newsletter which you can sign up there, and I will do my best not to spam you, of course, but there's some tips and tricks, some ideas, some books and podcast recommendations that I think might be supportive, and some stories about incredible people who've overcome difficulties in their life and ways to support much greater health holistically, mind, body, heart, and soul. In the meantime, I wish you all the very best. And until the next time, please remember to keep it in the greens.